Admissions in higher ed is stuck. Outdated tools and rigid processes slow institutions down, making it harder to truly connect with today's students. But Brittany at the College of Albemarle shows there's a better way.
At College of the Albemarle, we're always looking for new ways to better serve our students. Let's face it, though, life doesn't always fit into a 9-to-5 schedule. That's why we've been so excited about the AI tools we get to use through our CRM, Element 451. This makes connecting to COA easier than ever. We're working on Bolt AI Assistance, Bolt Discovery, and these are tools designed to give students access to COA resources and information anytime, day or night. Got a question about admissions? Need help exploring programs? Looking for resources? These tools are like having COA staff at your fingertips, ready to help whenever it's convenient for you.
Your prospective students get the information they need when they need it, and your team saves time. Visit element451.com to see how AI can help you simplify your admissions process to stay focused on what really matters, your students.
I had to figure out how to ask for help. And so struggling with imposter syndrome, I never really experienced that at the workplace level, but as far as a mom and being a young mom compared to, my peers or my kids' parents, I'm young. And so I never wanted to feel like they were babysitting me also, or I was one of the kids too. And so I'll never be the mom that does the reoccurring carpool. There are definitely class parties I miss out on. And so I had to find ways to give and feel great about that in different ways. But I also had to ask for help. And my husband likes to remind me, just as I would do anything, within my power for any other family, others are dying to do the same for us.
Welcome to Mission Admissions, a podcast that helps higher ed become better recruiters, communicators, marketers, and leaders. I'm your host, Jeremy Tiers, and every other week I'll share my candid conversations with industry leaders and difference makers from both inside and outside of higher ed. You'll walk away with advice, tips, and strategies to help you both professionally and personally. Mission Admissions is part of the Enrollify network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher ed professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. You can learn more at element451.com. Hey everybody, it's Jeremy Tiers, and this is episode 59 of the Mission Admissions podcast. As a parent, I can say that bringing a child into the world is life-changing in a number of ways. For those working in higher ed, it can also create challenges when it comes to maintaining a healthy work-life balance, especially if you're in a position of leadership like my guest today, Kelli Roberts, the Director of Admissions at Drury University in Springfield, Missouri. Besides her director role, Kelli also teaches business communication writing at Drury, and she is the proud mother of 4 children, a daughter and 3 sons, whose ages range from almost 4 to 17. So welcome to the show, Kelli.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, you and I have talked a number of times over the years, because we've known each other for a while, Kelli, about work-life balance. And I know you call it something different, which I would love to have you explain to the audience, but just talk to us about what that means to you as a working mom who's in a position of leadership, and just like, what are some of the practical strategies that you ultimately use to help you navigate everything that you're responsible for in your world?
Yes. So you definitely make me sound like a pro, which I am not, but I don't really believe in work-life balance. I think it implies a tug-of-war between opposing forces. I'm not in competition with my career, and that's always seemed kind of silly to me. So don't get me wrong. I know I can be replaced at Drury, but instead I like to focus on work-life integration, where both those pieces of me sort of coexist together. Some days work gets more of me. Some days, my family life gets more of me, and I feel like that's okay. I guess in terms of practical strategies, we talk a lot, at least in the workplace, about importance and urgency, what needs immediate attention, what doesn't, and learning which is better at the time. That only comes with practice. I don't really have a specific system, whether or not that's an app or writing notes or checklists or anything. I usually just dive in and go. My primary role is very reactive based. And so when I'm working with other jury stakeholders, a lot of times I need to send information out and wait for it to return. And so I realize even though those things might not be the tip top importance, if I'm relying on somebody else, I need to get those out sooner. As far as practical strategy, it's just staying on top of that communication because it takes away a lot of the pressure in that sort of work-life balance or work-life integration.
Yeah, work-life balance, work-life integration, whatever we want to call it. Communication is important, especially with your spouse or your significant other. And you and I were talking right before we jumped on. You've been married 14 years. I just celebrated last month 25. And I feel like, at least I know on my end, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Part of the reason that I'm able to have a really good balance, because I get told all the time, Jeremy, I see how much you're traveling. I see all the stuff you're posting on LinkedIn. Like, you must have a really bad work-life balance. And I'm like, no, it's actually really amazing. But part of that is because of the communication I have, with my significant other. And so I just wonder, are there things that if somebody's listening to this and they're in a relationship, whether they're a parent or not, that have helped you ultimately last as long as you have in higher ed because of the way you communicate with your significant other?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely approaches we can take. I mean, the big one, as cliche as it sounds, is quality over quantity and just recognizing, hey, this is some downtime that we have together. Let's make sure we make the most of it. But the same goes for the kids. A couple years ago, we asked, our then 8-year-old, hey, we need you to sit out of basketball for 8 weeks. Your younger brother, he needs swimming lessons. And so it's, as long as you create that sort of atmosphere, I think in your work life and family life, you're not competing with one another for time. It's trying to make the most of the pie. And it's not always going to be, in our case, 6 pieces of the pie that are equally shaped at all times. But I mean, we're also very intentional with our time. So we will not eat dinner in front of the TV unless, of course, the Celtics are playing. Then we're definitely watching the game. Our kids don't have video consoles. I don't even know if that's what they're called, but that's not in the house. My 13-year-old, he still has screen time limits. We just gave our 17-year-old sort of access to social media, but it's getting all of that environmental noise away from our lives so that whenever we do want to connect with one another, we can be as intentional as possible.
Yeah, I love that you use the word intentionality. I mean, that's such an important word in so many different aspects of life, let alone leadership and parenting. So you started your career, let's back up, a little over 11 years ago in higher ed. And at that time, you had 2 kids. And then, like 2 years in, you decide to have your third child. So, like, when you were on maternity or parental leave, were you able to completely disconnect from work? Or be honest with us, was that something you struggled with?
Well, I also like how you're assuming we planned to have all of these kids, which wasn't necessarily the case. No, the first time I went on maternity leave, I was really bad at disconnecting. I was the transfer admission counselor at that time, the only one. And there were so many day-to-day tasks that only I knew how to do. And so, of course, I created a Kelly hit by the bus day-to-day strategy. But then you're laying there in the middle of the night with a newborn, obviously checking email. I was new to the profession and it hadn't quite dawned on me yet that answering emails at 2:30 in the morning is just not a good look. It's not a professional look. I thought it was more, oh, I can help you at this time, so let's do that. But it never crossed my mind, A, that it was unprofessional like it would now. But B, then when the admission counselor covering my territory came in the next day, there was so much confusion. Did you answer this email? What do I need to do? How do you play catch up? And so it didn't take us long to realize that I needed to completely butt out and take that time. When we had our fourth son, it was after COVID. So strategies in terms of working from home and understanding, empowerment of a team and those sorts of things. I was much better at it by the time the fourth one came around. But I had also built so much trust just in my immediate office and the offices that, were related to admissions. They trusted me and I felt that trust. So I didn't feel like I had to tune in as regularly. And so I would maybe touch base with, my supervisor or my team every other week. But otherwise, it was we pretend like Kelly doesn't exist, and that was best for all worlds.
Well, having that clarity, right? And hopefully whether it's you or whether it's, the person above you in that leadership position, kind of explaining, hey, when Kelly's out, like this is what this is going to look like. I think back to communication, right? That's super important because then we're not guessing, what are you supposed to be doing? What am I supposed to be doing? Wait, is Kelly doing this or is she completely? And so that level of communication, I don't know. Again, I go back to things that I feel like have helped at least myself and my wife make it 25 years of marriage. We over communicate a lot of times, sometimes to a fault, without question. But like that communication is so important. So you talked about your fourth son being born there, around 2021. That's when this leadership opportunity that you're in now, right? Being the director of admissions presents itself. So, like, whatever you remember, talk us through, Kelly, your decision making process at the time. Like, how do you say, all right, I've got 3 kids. I'm about to have a newborn. How am I going to make this all work if I move into this director role? Even if you were, which I'm sure you were, right? Super excited for the opportunity. Like, how did that all come about in terms of the decision making process?
We might back up just a little bit. So from 2018 to 2020, I kind of sort of had a leadership role in our non-traditional space. So with our evening and online classes, and Drury has a number of satellite campuses. And so for a while, I worked sort of in that department on an interim basis. And one of those semesters, I drove to St. Robert, Missouri, which is a little over hour 15 from where I live, and opened that campus. Big military population. It was sort of trial by fire. And so I kind of had that leadership under my belt already anyway, moving back into the traditional space of director of admission. But in terms of sort of visiting with friends and, of course, the grandparents that were already helping out with kids and my husband and my 2 older kids at the time, it wasn't really hey, as a family, are we all on board with this? We've always been open with ambition, whether or not that be career or pieces as a family. And so it was really never can we do this? It was, yes, absolutely. Let's jump on the opportunity and we'll kind of figure it out later. Drury is often, at the tip top in importance, just as our family life as Roberts. Drury, a lot of the times the kids are even more appreciative, of course, when they get discounts for the summer and spring break basketball camps and soccer camps. They really love Drury in the summer. But, not too long ago, my son's basketball team got to sit in the president's suite. And so Drury provides their insurance. They understand and they at least appreciate we have health insurance. We know this is a blessing. We know not everybody in the world has access to care like we need if we bump our elbow or something. Drury's always been at the forefront for us, but I would say just overall in leadership and deciding to do some of those things. If you feel like, you want to move into a place of leadership, and communication will kind of always be what I come back to. But if you feel, for anybody listening, that you're misunderstood often, you might want to hone some of those skills in. If you feel like you can't manage your energy now, and I know we'll probably talk about burnout a little bit, but if those feelings arise in you often, it's probably not time for leadership yet until you master some of those skills. It was a learned behavior, but I had to figure out how to ask for help. And so, struggling with imposter syndrome, I never really experienced that at the workplace level, but as far as a mom and being a young mom compared to, my peers or my kids' parents, I'm young. And so I never wanted to feel like they were babysitting me also, or I was one of the kids too. And so I'll never be the mom that does the reoccurring carpool. There are definitely class parties I miss out on. And so I had to find ways to give and feel great about that in different ways. But I also had to ask for help. And my husband likes to remind me, just as I would do anything within my power for any other family. Others are dying to do the same for us, and they love my children and all of these people, our tribe in every corner, whether or not it's family. Kevin, my supervisor, he's excellent. And he, encourages me to do things, on the family front. And so and I built it. I've worked really hard to build all of, the structures in place and the trust that I have, but I had to ask for help. And that was probably one of the bigger things that I've had to overcome as our family grew.
What are the 10 AI tools you can't afford to miss in 2025? From automating tasks to personalizing content, find out at AI Engage Summit. This free virtual event on February 25th and 26th will give you the tools to thrive in higher ed's AI-powered future. Register now at enrollify.org/engage. Was there a tipping point, if you remember, when it just got to a point where you said, okay, yeah, there's no option left, I have to ask for help? Or do you remember what was it that ultimately got you to the mindset of, yeah, I can't do this as much as I want to try on my own anymore?
Yeah, kid 4 threw it all kind of out the window, and being able to ask for help and being okay if things aren't exactly according to plan and it all works out in the end. But I started missing things. I would forget things. It didn't matter if it was in the planner. And so, after so many times, maybe 10 times, it's okay. This is the point when I officially know I have too much on my plate.
How's your parenting approach changed over the years? Like when you think back to kid 1 versus kid 4, any big changes, or you feel like it's kind of always been the way it is now?
I wouldn't say there's been any big changes, but I feel like just internally, I get less attached to things. It doesn't have to go Kelly's way. And I wouldn't say I've necessarily changed any, parenting strategies, or I don't know. I don't think I have fundamentally changed, but I've been able to accept things easier or with a more healthy attitude when things don't go my way.
And then I wonder, to build on that, how has your approach to parenting ultimately influenced your approach to leadership?
Yeah, that's a really great one too. And my 4 children, they're also unique. They're different from one another. And in many ways, that's similar to our staff. Drury has never, at least in our admissions crew, we've never been a one size fits all. Everyone comes from a different background. They have different goals. We're very different people from one another. Some of that definitely you can see, as we go through different political landscapes too. But we all love each other. But I think one of the biggest pieces is, yes, I am a leader with children. I didn't always have this many, but I've always had some. But when you value your colleagues, and especially those on the crew that I lead, whether or not they have kids, I need to value what is important to them. So we may not agree or do the same things or have the same hobbies, but if I have someone that has a book club or they're on a softball team or they're taking classes, that's really important in their life. That is their kid. And so we don't have to have the same things going on in our lives to appreciate and find value in what they do.
I mean, I'm sure you could probably answer a bunch of things to this, but I am curious which one you'll pick. What is the biggest challenge to being a working mom?
I mean, I would say the constant mental load. Your brain is it's just always on. And that becomes tiring, but also I have an ego, right? Like I want to be needed. I like to fulfill that role. So there's still a lot of gratification in that. I won't say I'm a martyr to it. I won't be like that dramatic, but I am destined to be a mom and a working mom at that. I've always wanted to have a career. Tried to stay at home for like 9 months with our second born, and that didn't work for me. I was a horrible stay-at-home mom. I would also say I don't want to overlook workplace attire being a challenge. And I know that sounds so minuscule and so funny, but at Drury anyway, we're probably a step above business casual. That's a lot. And clothes are expensive. And when you have 4 children, your weight fluctuates a lot, right? And that's tough. But then also, I always have a bag. I'm never going straight home. And so just the other day, I forgot tennis shoes. So it's like, okay, well, I guess I'll be in leggings and high heels tonight for the basketball game. I'm not keeping on this dress all day long any longer than I have to. But I am constantly forgetting multiple wardrobe things. And that is a challenge.
Did not see you going there, but it makes complete
It does.
sense.
And so when you talk about, okay, like, yes, but practically, what does that mean? Put me in your shoes. It is remembering jeans and then still having a dress on, or forgetting a tennis shoe or a flip flop, depending on the time of year, because I'm never going straight home. I'm never going home. Not right away.
So if someone listening to this, Kelly, is not a parent yet, but they see themselves, in the not too distant future starting a family. And again, they're also aspirational in terms of, like we've been talking about, wanting to be in a position of leadership. Just like what advice, I mean, whether it's kind of punctuating something you've already said or just something different, like what advice or what, hey, looking back, I wish somebody had told me this because it would have been helpful for me at that time.
Yeah. Well, time is finite. We all know that. It is our greatest resource. Angel Perez, the NACAC CEO, he talks a lot about energy management rather than time management. And I would say if I knew that, even had just heard it 5 years ago, I think, and it only makes sense as you get into it, but managing your energy and your personal investment or reinvestment in things. All of us have so many things we want to accomplish in a day, but you have to master taking care of your energy, your energies, and a lot of that technique just comes from communication. I need this, or yes, I can of course get that done, but this needs to happen first because time's finite. But depending on the space, did you get enough sleep or where you're at? Did you eat appropriately? Some of that, just getting back to basics, you can do so much more if your energy is at 100% or even above 80% than you can if, you're just operating at half level or half of what you're capable of.
You mentioned burnout earlier, so I'll just flat out ask, has it happened and how did you deal with it?
Honestly, I don't know. I'm not actually sure I would know what that sort of rock bottom looks like. I've been irritated with my workplace. I've definitely felt, overwhelmed, but I'm very strict with myself and personal accountability. I think if burnout were to occur, it's probably my own fault or my own mismanagement of time or not reading my body's signals. I don't wallow. I feel that's just a colossal waste of time. I feel like in 24 hours, I need to be able to come up with a solution either for the livelihood of my team or for myself. So I don't know. I don't know if I've experienced burnout.
Well, let me ask you this then. Where does that personal accountability you just talked about come from?
Yeah, that's probably part of my DNA too. I don't know. I grew up in a very corporate sort of household. And again, I guess before there was an actual name to it, work life integration was always part of just my family as I was growing up. My dad was an entrepreneur. We had a family business. And so you have to be accountable to yourself. And a job well done is when I'm working from, really start to finish. That's hard in this cycle too. And I don't know if it's a generational thing, but workplace culture and workplace work and that of I need a break or I'm due for a break or I've earned a break. Some of that's really fascinating to me. So I don't know. I also have an ego, like I said, and I know a lot, at least societally, is the idea of saying no, or you need to say no more often. But I'm a yes girl. I'll always be a yes girl. I like being someone's go to. I like the pesky little challenges that might not be part of my day to day work, but they definitely fall under other duties as assigned. And I'm just going to keep jumping in, whether or not that's internal satisfaction and that's my ego, or if that's because someone knows if they call Kelly, she'll know what to do or she can get it done.
So then how do you know what's too much for you?
I don't know. Is there a too much? If there is, I don't know what it is yet.
I think too much is when you just feel mentally and or physically, right, exhausted amongst other things. And so maybe, you've never been there, but I know I've had times in my life where I just am like, okay, like it's not that I can't finish all these things, but I look at goals a little differently too, in that I'm not just trying to check a box. Like I want to be, I was at a school in Tennessee last week and we talked about this. And one of the staff on a break said, "Hey, you're meeting one-on-one with all of us tomorrow. You realize there's 25 of us here." And I said, "I know." And they said, "So what are you going to do tonight? Because you just talked to us all day too." And I said, "I'm going to go. I'm going to have a nice meal. I'm not going to talk to a single person at dinner. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to sleep about 9.5 hours. And I think they thought I was joking, but that's exactly what I did. Because I know if I don't get that from my body, then there's no way my mind's going to be able to. I'm not just going to try to get through all those meetings. I'm going to do what I can to serve all of those people." So I think part of it to me is just if you're not able to have a mindset like that because of, again, you're not going to get enough sleep, like you said earlier, your energy level's low, or you just find yourself like mentally fatigued, maybe that's when it's too much.
Yeah, and I don't have a pre-existing idea that my work's going to stop at 5 o'clock. So I think just knowing that in the back of my head and having the freedom and having the grace in my home that if not everything gets done, I can work on it until 11 o'clock if I needed to. And so just the buildup of pressure, I think is probably where a lot of burnout comes from. But if I'm not experiencing that pressure because I'm not worried about a work-life balance or clocking out at 5 o'clock, just the freedom to be able to complete those tasks and serve someone else or serve one of Drury's stakeholders, I can do that. I'm also president-elect for our Missouri Association of College Admission Counseling. And when I came on board with the organization as the treasurer, I remember being at NACAC. I'm trying to think. It might have been NACAC in Baltimore. And I remember I was pretty overwhelmed. There were some tears, probably 72 hours of this is too hard for me. But I had already accomplished feeling overwhelmed before, whether or not that was working on a master's degree or undergraduate and having newborns. And you learn to depend on yourself and you learn to know that you're going to make it through. And if anything else, that just sort of provides resilience or the attitude of resiliency, and you just power through it. I don't love the fake it till you make it, but in moments like that, I know that works for me. And I have the grace at home. I have a great supervisor. I have family that lives nearby. And so, I was sick last week and my mom kept my kids for 2 nights in a row. And that was exactly what I needed to sleep and get over it. And so you have to have your tribe also.
Kelli, the last thing I do on every episode is something that's called Fun Rapid Fire. So I'm going to give you a handful of things, and I just want to get some quick feedback from you on each. What's the best thing about living on a cattle ranch? Because you hit on earlier, you do live on a cattle ranch about 45 minutes outside of Springfield.
Obviously beef. Ribeye steaks anytime I want them. And then I would say I can almost see the stars every single night.
Favorite kind of wine to have with said beef would be?
A red wine, a Malbec, a Merlot, maybe. Yeah, any of those. I don't know. There's not a lot of wine in our household lately. So, yes, but a Malbec sounds great, followed by some sleepy time hot tea.
Okay. What is the biggest challenge of doing hot yoga as somebody who's never done hot yoga before?
Breathing, remembering to breathe.
How long's a hot yoga session?
It depends, but generally about an hour.
Okay. And as you alluded to when we first jumped on, the only thing that seems to pull potentially you guys away from the table at dinner time is the Boston Celtics, which I knew ahead of time. So as a Boston Celtics fan, part A of this is, will they win a second consecutive NBA championship this year? Yes or no?
Of course they will.
Okay. And so who will they play in the championship game?
I didn't see that one coming. Definitely not the Warriors.
Definitely not the Warriors.
Definitely not the Warriors. I think there's been some really sneaky trades going on lately. So we'll see. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see how that shakes some things up.
And without you picking an opponent, I'm still going to ask you this. Then how many games will that series go?
6.
Okay. I would say 6 or 7. There's a 5, 6, 7 teams, I think, right now in the NBA, depending on how the trade deadline, which ironically is the week we're recording this here in 48 hours or so from now, right? It will come up here at the start of February. I think there's about a half dozen teams that, along with Boston, right, actually probably have a legitimate chance. So, Kelli, I greatly appreciate you spending some time with us and just being open to, share some things about how you manage everything as a working mom and a leader. And I look forward to the next time we talk.
So good to visit with you, Jeremy. Thank you.
Mission Admissions is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a number of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admission professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Jamie Hunt, Allison Tercio, Day Cabilds, and so many other amazing leaders in the higher ed space. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create more meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. You can learn more at element451.com.